I knew I was replaceable the moment she laughed at his joke louder than she'd ever laughed at mine. It wasn't some cinematic betrayal. No slamming doors, no screaming matches. Just one quiet Thursday evening where I sat on the couch, clutching a grocery receipt, realizing half the items weren't for me. Oat milk, vegan jerky, lavender body wash. Things I'd never touched. Things he liked. She was already gone. Her body was still in the house, but her eyes had packed their bags months ago. I just didn't want to see it. Or maybe I did, but I thought if I ignored it long enough, she'd come back. Her name doesn't matter anymore. You can call her her. You can call her everything I wasn't. You can call her the storm in a silk dress. I used to call her my wife. And me? I'm Drury. Like the hotel. I fix vending machines for a living. If that gives you any idea of how glamorous my world is. Chips. Candy. Sometimes a soda stuck in the coil. That's my daily crisis. I don't save lives. I don't build empires. I just make sure someone's Snickers doesn't get trapped halfway out. When she left, it wasn't with a suitcase. It was with a phone call. She stood in the kitchen with her back turned, said something about needing more, and that she was already expecting. My heart didn't shatter. It evaporated. You ever feel your soul leave your body while you're still standing? She moved in with him that weekend. Some guy named Trace. Trace. That's not even a full name. That's what you find of someone after they disappear. And disappear she did. From my life. From my bed. From the playlists we made. From the dreams we shared. And I didn't just spiral. I dug. I dug a hole so deep, even the daylight forgot how to reach me. I remember sleeping on the floor for no reason. It wasn't punishment. It just felt like I didn't deserve comfort. I stopped brushing my teeth. Stopped checking the mail. I once wore the same shirt for 5 days until I caught my reflection and didn't recognize the man looking back. Her Instagram? A highlight reel of the life I was never meant to have. Her baby bump. His arm around her waist. Their matching tattoos, courage and chaos. Guess which one she was? 2 years passed like wet cement. I existed inside it. Slow, stuck, heavy. Until that day. Until the mall. I didn't go there for anything in particular. I just needed to feel human. Needed to smell pretzels. Needed to hear children whining for toys. Something normal. And then I heard it. Her laugh. I didn't need to turn. My bones already knew. But I did. And there she was. Holding a child in her arms. Smiling at something her new man said. Wearing the same coat I once bought her for Christmas. Then she saw me. And everything stopped. Her smile collapsed. Her feet locked. Her eyes widened like the ghost of her past had just materialized by the frozen yogurt stand. And for the first time in forever, I stood tall. Because unlike her, I didn't freeze. She stood there like she had seen a ghost. Only this ghost wasn't translucent. This ghost had color in his face again. Shoes with no holes. A fresh haircut. I hadn't planned to see her. God knows I wouldn't have worn a wrinkled hoodie if I knew this was the day she'd return from the dead in my timeline. But the universe doesn't care about preparation. It cares about impact. She was holding a little girl on her hip. The kid looked about too, give or take, and she had Clementine's eyes. That gray-blue storm color that used to undo me. Her hair was tied in a messy little puff, and she had chocolate smeared across one cheek. Trace stood next to them, laughing at something he saw on his phone, completely unaware that his personal apocalypse had just entered the food court. Clementine didn't say a word, didn't wave, didn't call out, just stared. Like if she moved, the whole scene would collapse and reveal itself as a nightmare. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I didn't do a damn thing except hold her gaze. Because I wanted her to feel it. Every second of silence. Every ounce of shame. Every echo of my breakdowns at 2 a.m. when I used to cry into the carpet like a man possessed. She looked aged. Not tired, not messy. Just older. Like regret had carved lines into her that even makeup couldn't hide. And I thought, so this is what winning looks like. The moment felt like it lasted hours, but it must have been 20 seconds tops. Trace finally noticed her pause and turned toward me. His smirk dropped a little when he saw me. No words, no nods, no bravado. Just a flicker of awareness, like he realized I wasn't a story anymore. I was real, standing 5 feet from his family, the one I used to belong to. I don't know what made me walk toward them. Maybe it was stupid. Maybe it was brave. But I did. 1 foot after the other. Not fast, not dramatic. Just calm, steady, quiet. Clementine's breath hitched. She gripped the child tighter like I might take her. as if I wanted anything that came from that womb of betrayal. And then I passed her. I didn't say her name, didn't ask how she'd been. I looked down at the kid for half a second, just enough to take in the face of a child born from lies. Then I turned my head away and kept walking. But right before I cleared the corner, I heard her voice. Small, almost shaking. Drury. I froze. For a moment, the old instinct to turn back burned in my spine. The same instinct that made me forgive her when she forgot my birthday, when she left without goodbye, when she stopped calling and I still waited by the phone. But I didn't move. I let her hang in the air with my silence. Then I walked away. And this time, I swear to God, I didn't look back. But if I had, I think I would have seen something that would have broken me all over again. Because what I heard as I walked away was a sob, just one, sharp and quick, like something finally cracked inside her. And maybe that's what she deserved. But part of me still hated how much it hurt to hear. Most people think she just left, and that was it. Like a clean cut. Like scissors to a ribbon. But it wasn't. Not even close. The truth is, and I've never admitted this out loud, she didn't leave right away. Not completely. There was a final week before she walked out of our house. And in that week, I saw the worst version of both of us. I buried it for 2 years because it was humiliating. Not just the things she did, but the things I let happen. The night before she dropped the bomb, the pregnancy, the other man, the big dramatic exit. She crawled into bed beside me like nothing was wrong. She even tucked her feet under mine like she always did when they got cold. I remember lying there, frozen, pretending to sleep, staring at the ceiling and trying not to breathe too loud. I wanted to ask her why. Why was she still acting like my wife if she was already someone else's future? But I didn't ask. I couldn't. Because deep down, I already knew. And if I said it out loud, it would become real. The next morning, she made pancakes. Pancakes. I sat at the table, chewing those flat, joyless things like they were her goodbye letter. She acted like everything was normal. Asked if I had any appointments that day. Kissed me on the cheek. I think that was the part that hurt most. How good she was at pretending. Later that day, I found her phone unlocked on the bathroom counter. I didn't mean to look. I wish I hadn't. But curiosity is a blade that cuts deeper than truth. The messages between her and Trace weren't just romantic. They were cruel. They laughed about me. About my job. About how soft I was. She sent him a photo of my hands, calloused and dry, and wrote, "He's more machine than man these days. It's like hugging a piece of furniture." I dropped the phone. It clattered against the tile, screen cracking across her smiling lock screen. I waited for her to find it. Waited for the confrontation. But she never asked. She must have known what I saw. Maybe she wanted me to. Maybe it was her way of making me let go so she didn't have to be the villain out loud. That night, she told me about the baby. And I broke. I don't mean crying. I don't mean yelling. I mean broke. I slid down the kitchen cabinet like my bones gave out. I remember gripping the linoleum like the floor was trying to swallow me. She didn't kneel. Didn't hold me. Just stood there in silence. Like she was watching a dog she had no more room for. But here's what I've never said. Not even to myself. Not fully. Before she left, before she packed her things into that old Subaru, before Trace picked her up with the windows down and that smug, sun-kissed grin, she asked me something. She said, "Are you going to be okay?" And I nodded. That was the last lie I ever told her. Because no, I wasn't okay. I wasn't okay for a long time. I still wasn't, not fully. Not even now. 2 years later, after seeing her freeze at the mall like she'd glimpsed a version of herself she buried with me. But here's the thing, something changed in that moment. Something small, quiet, but permanent. I finally realized that the most painful part of her betrayal wasn't losing her. It was realizing I had never truly had her to begin with. The day after she left, I cleaned the kitchen 4 times. Not because it was dirty, but because I didn't know what else to do. I wiped down the counters with shaking hands. I emptied the fridge, tossed out the groceries we bought together, and stood for almost 10 minutes staring at a half-used bottle of almond milk, wondering if I'd cry over it. I didn't. Not then. That didn't come until I opened the drawer. We had this little drawer in the hallway. Not big, not deep. Just one of those places where old receipts, batteries, loose change, and expired coupons go to die. The junk drawer, you know? But it wasn't junk that I found. Not this time. Buried beneath a tangle of dead pins and rubber bands was a small blue notebook. Nothing fancy. Just a spiral-bound notepad with a few bent corners and a stain on the cover. The second I touched it, something inside me twisted. It was hers. Her handwriting. Her secrets. I shouldn't have opened it. But of course I did. At first, it looked like harmless journaling. Yoga notes, meal planning, a grocery list with weird items like dried hibiscus and Trace's favorite granola. But then I turned to a page titled, Things I Can't Say Out Loud. That's when the floor dropped out. Each line was like a punch to the ribs. Brutally honest. Careless in its cruelty. Like she never thought anyone would read it, especially not me. Sometimes I feel like I married a coat rack. Useful, but invisible. I miss danger. I miss tension. I miss feeling like someone wants to devour me. Drury loves me too much. It makes me want to run. Trace sees me. Drury sees through me. My hands started trembling so violently the notebook nearly slipped out of my grip. But I kept reading. Every line peeling away another layer of the lie she had gift-wrapped our marriage in. She had been gone long before she ever left. She had grieved me while sleeping next to me. She had buried us while I was still breathing. But there was one line, just one, that didn't make me angry. It didn't even make me cry. It made me cold. If this falls apart, I know Drury will take me back. He always does. That's when I understood. I wasn't her husband. I was her exit strategy. A plan B. A soft place to land. Her emotional spare tire. And she left that notebook behind because she never imagined I'd grow a spine after she was gone. She thought I'd sit by the phone like I always did. Thought I'd stay broken. Predictable. Forgiving. Waiting. That moment, reading those words, was the closest thing I've ever felt to clarity. It was the moment I stopped loving her. Fully, completely, and forever. But clarity doesn't heal. It just shows you where to start cutting. So I did what I never thought I would. I packed up the last box of her stuff and mailed it to her new address. Without a note, without a return address, without a single trace of emotion. Inside, I slipped the notebook. And just like she did to me, I let her find the truth in silence. It started with a text I almost didn't open. A random number, no name, no context. Just a single line that buzzed my phone at 1:47 in the morning. I know you don't know me, but I know what she did. At first, I thought it was spam. One of those scams pretending to be a psychic or some emotionally manipulative phishing scheme. I almost deleted it. But something in those words, the deliberate simplicity, felt human. I waited until morning. My thumb hovered over the message for nearly 5 minutes before I finally typed back. Who is this? No response for hours. Then, at 3:12 p.m., the second message came. My name's Sarah. I used to work with Clementine. We were close. Not anymore. That name hit something. I remembered it vaguely. Someone she used to mention in passing, back when she still told me about her life. Sarah from the studio. Sarah wants to go vintage shopping. Sarah thinks Trace is hot. I never paid attention. Just background characters in a story I thought was ours. But now this background character was stepping out from the shadows with something she clearly needed to get off her chest. I hesitated. Then I asked, "Why are you messaging me now?" Her reply came fast, like she had it ready. "Because I think you deserve to know that Clementine isn't who she pretends to be. And because what she says about you isn't okay." My stomach twisted. I asked if we could talk. Really talk. She agreed, but only by phone. "Too much to explain over text," she said. "And I don't want anything written down." We spoke that night. I remember sitting on the floor, my back against the kitchen cabinets, the same ones I had collapsed against 2 years earlier. Everything had come full circle. Only this time, I was listening. Sarah didn't hold back. She told me things I hadn't imagined, even at my most paranoid. Like how Clementine had started seeing Trace long before she confessed, nearly 6 months earlier. How she used to complain that I never noticed when she changed her hair, that I asked too many questions, or sucked the adventure out of life. How she once joked to her coworkers that being with me felt like dating an apology. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what she said after the breakup. Sarah admitted that Clementine used to show off the notebook, that notebook, to people. Not everyone, but enough. Like a diary, but with teeth, she called it. She laughed about it. Bragged, even. Said she left it behind on purpose to see if I'd crack. Like it was a social experiment. Like I was a lab rat running through her maze. I wanted to throw up. But Sarah's voice softened near the end of the call. She told me she had cut Clementine off after a party, when she saw her mock a voicemail I'd left during our separation. A message I barely remembered leaving, slurred with grief, asking her to come home. I had cried, begged. Clementine played it at the party for laughs. That was the line for Sarah. That was when she saw the cruelty for what it was. Not trauma, not healing, not empowerment. Just ego in disguise. And she told me something else. Something I wasn't ready for. Clementine wasn't doing great. Despite the photos, the filters, the curated perfection. Sarah said the word was that Trace wasn't sticking around much. That the fairy tale had cracks. Big ones. And that Clementine had started asking mutual friends about me. About whether I was seeing anyone. Whether I still lived alone. Whether I'd ever forgiven her. I didn't respond to that. I couldn't. Because part of me wanted to scream, and the other part, the broken, bleeding part, wanted to hope. And that scared the hell out of me. Because even after everything, some small, stupid, self-destructive part of me still wondered. What would I do if she came back? It came 2 days after my conversation with Sarah. I was sitting on the floor again, same spot, same kitchen. You'd think I would have learned by now to sit in a damn chair like a functioning adult. But there's something about the floor. Something grounding about feeling the cold tile press against your spine when your mind starts to lift off like a balloon. The message came through a private number. No name. Just the 3 dots blinking at the bottom of the screen for a long, slow moment. And then it appeared. Can we talk? Just 3 words. No hi. No, it's me. But I knew. I knew like you know your own name in the dark. I didn't respond at first. I just stared at it. You'd think the moment would feel like triumph. The ghost finally knocking at my door. But it didn't. It felt like a trap. Like the kind of moment that punishes you for hoping. An hour passed. Then another. Then came the second message. It's important. Not about us. That part hit me harder than it should have. Not about us. The final nail in the fantasy. Like she was making sure I knew this wasn't a reconciliation. This wasn't closure. This wasn't anything I wanted it to be. But I replied. Of course I did. What do you want? She didn't answer by text. She called. I stared at the screen as her name. Yes, I'd never deleted it. Lit up for the first time in 2 years. The ringtone sounded wrong. Too cheerful. I picked up on the 4th ring, held the phone to my ear, and said nothing. Her voice was soft. Too soft. The kind of softness that's laced with a favor on the other end. Hi, Drury. God. I hated how hearing her say my name still made my chest tighten. I didn't say anything. She continued. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. And I deserve that. But I didn't know who else to call. That's when she dropped it. Trace was gone. Not dead, not missing. Just gone. Walked out. Left a note and a pair of car keys on the table. Said he wasn't built for fatherhood. Took his music equipment, his boots, and every excuse she'd ever used to justify tearing our lives apart. And now she was alone. Completely. And scared. She said the baby, Olive, had been sick for a week. High fevers, inconsolable crying, sleepless nights. Clementine hadn't been able to afford a doctor visit since Trace left. She didn't have insurance. She was behind on rent. And she needed help. But not just money. I need someone to drive us to the hospital. I don't know who else would. I should have said no. Every fiber of logic in my body was screaming to say no. But logic doesn't always win. Not when guilt is involved. Not when some traitorous part of you still wants to be needed, even by the person who broke you. So I asked where she lived. I asked what time she needed me. And at 8:14 that evening, I pulled into the parking lot of a crumbling apartment complex on the east side of town. The kind of place where porch lights flicker and broken bikes rest in the grass like forgotten memories. She came out holding Olive in a blanket. The kid looked smaller than I expected. Tired. Pale. But Clementine, she looked worse. Her face had changed. Hollowed out. Eyes ringed with sleeplessness. Hair unwashed. Lips cracked from worry and pride swallowed too long. When she climbed into my passenger seat and softly said, "Thank you," something inside me fractured all over again. Not because I still loved her, but because some part of me still remembered how to. And that terrified me. Because I knew this wasn't the end. This was the beginning of something else. Something far more complicated. We spent 4 hours in that emergency room. I hadn't stepped foot in a hospital since my dad died in one. The smell alone, antiseptic and anxiety, triggered something deep in my bones. But I didn't say a word. Just sat there in the waiting room, watching Clementine rock Olive in her arms like she was trying to soothe her own guilt instead of the child. The doctor called them in around 10 p.m. I stayed behind, flipping through a 3-month-old People magazine like it held the secret to forgiveness. When they came back out, Olive looked calmer, drowsy from medication. Clementine looked like she hadn't breathed the entire time. We didn't say much on the drive back. Just silence, broken by Olive's occasional cough from the back seat. The streets were wet with light drizzle, and every red light felt longer than the last. But somewhere between 4th and Pine, Clementine spoke. "You're still kind." I didn't answer, because kind wasn't the right word. Weak, maybe. Naive, definitely. But kind felt like a title I hadn't earned yet. She kept looking out the window, her breath fogging the glass. Then she said something that turned my stomach inside out. "Trace used to say you were boring, that I was wasting my fire on someone who didn't know how to burn." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My jaw clenched, but I stayed quiet. I wanted to hear it all, but he never saw me. Not really. Just the version of me he built in his head. The wild woman, that's what he called me. Said I was like a storm, and he was the only one brave enough to stand in the rain. She laughed softly, but it wasn't joy. It was rot. That bitter laugh people use when they finally admitted the person they sacrificed everything for was never even real. When I got pregnant, I thought it would fix everything. I thought it would give the chaos purpose. But Trace didn't want purpose. He wanted a trophy. Something beautiful, messy, and temporary. I felt my stomach twist. So I lied. That stopped everything. She turned toward me. Her eyes were glassy, but there was no apology in them. Just raw, naked honesty. "The baby, there's a chance she's not his." The road blurred. I almost missed the next turn. My fingers went numb. I didn't plan it. I didn't even know until after I left. But the timing, there's a window where it could have been yours. I never told you because you would have forgiven me. You would have tried to make it work. And I couldn't live with that kind of mercy. I pulled over. Right there, under the buzzing light of an old gas station that had long since closed. I put the car in park and sat in the silence that followed. There was no explosion, no yelling, no breakdown, just the sound of Olive breathing in the back seat, and the sudden, nauseating possibility that the child I had spent 2 years resenting might have been mine all along. I couldn't look at Clementine. I just stared straight ahead, at the cracked windshield, at my own reflection in the glass. "I need a test," I said finally. My voice felt like gravel. She nodded, slowly. "I'll do whatever you want." But that wasn't what I wanted. What I wanted, what I needed, was for this to make sense. For everything to collapse in a way that was clean. But now there were splinters in every direction. Truths that weren't complete. Lies wrapped in half-confessions. And the one thing I had convinced myself I didn't want, a connection to her, to that child, now pulsed through me like a second heartbeat. I dropped her off without another word. As she climbed out, she paused and looked back through the open window. "You were never boring, Drury. I was just too afraid to sit still with someone who loved me that much." Then she was gone, and I sat there long after she disappeared into that building, staring at my own trembling hands. Not because of what she said, but because for the first time in 2 years, I didn't know if I hated her anymore. And that scared me more than anything. The DNA test took a week. 7 days of waiting, pacing, imagining futures that both terrified and comforted me. I kept thinking about Olive. Her laugh. The way she fell asleep in the back seat that night with her tiny hand curled into a fist like the world was something she'd one day punch back. I'd barely known her for a few hours, but part of me, a part one didn't recognize, already felt protective. But I didn't tell Clementine that. We kept our distance during that week. Only necessary texts. No calls. No small talk. No late-night confessions. It was better that way. Cleaner. Safer. I wasn't going to be baited into another emotional loop where I thought I could fix something that was never mine to repair. When the envelope came, I didn't open it right away. I set it on the table and made a cup of tea, peppermint, because I was trying to feel like someone who had his life together. Then I sat down and opened it. It said, "Probability of paternity, 0. 0%. I stared at that number for a long time. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. It was final, clean, clear. The baby wasn't mine. And yet, I didn't feel relief. I felt something harder to name. A strange cocktail of grief and closure. Not because I wanted her to be mine, not really, but because part of me had wrapped my healing around the idea that if Olive was mine, maybe everything I went through had a reason. But it didn't. Sometimes pain is just pain. I met with Clementine one last time. Not at her apartment. Not at my place. Neutral ground. A little park downtown with too many squirrels and peeling benches. She sat across from me, holding a coffee with both hands like she needed the warmth more than the caffeine. She looked thinner, tired, but softer, like the sharp edges of her had been dulled by time and mistakes. I handed her the envelope. She didn't open it right away. "So?" she asked, almost whispering. "Not mine," I said. Calm, gentle, like a surgeon breaking bad news with dignity. She nodded once, said nothing, just looked down at her coffee like it held answers her life had refused to give her. I could have walked away then. That would have been the dramatic ending. Me, striding off into the distance, finally free. But I didn't, because something inside me, the part that still held empathy, even for her, needed one final moment of clarity. "You hurt me more than I thought a human could," I said, voice steady. "But I don't hate you. Not anymore." She looked up, eyes red. A tear slid down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it. "I don't deserve that," she said. "No, you don't," I replied. "But I do. I deserve to move on without carrying you like a stone in my chest." And that was it. No hug, no handshake. Just two people finally accepting that the chapter was closed. Not burned, not torn, but sealed. 3 months later, I met someone. Her name is Maeve. She's a librarian. Wears glasses that always slide down her nose and laughs too loud at her own jokes. Our first date was at a bookstore cafe. She spilled coffee on her shirt and didn't even flinch. Just looked at me and said, "Guess you'll remember me now." And I did. We're not rushing anything. I'm not trying to replace old pain with new distraction. I've done that before. But she's good, steady, honest in a way that makes silence comfortable. And me? I finally went back to work. I fixed a vending machine last week that had been broken for 6 months. The customer sent a thank you card. Said his daughter smiled for the first time in weeks after getting a stuck candy bar. Funny how small things can feel like redemption. I don't think I'll ever fully understand why Clementine did what she did. But I'm done looking for reasons in the ashes. Sometimes survival is the win. And sometimes, moving on is the loudest kind of peace.